We wanted to talk a little bit because we're coming up on the anniversary of a pivotal time in your administration here in Arkansas. Was the time of the executions to use up the remaining execution drugs. And I'll start by asking, what stands out 7 years on that you recollect most about that time in April of 2017?
Anytime a governor has to carry out an execution under the law, it is a sobering time. It is a difficult time, and it's controversial, obviously. But the legislature is the one that sets the rules, and the jury carries out the sentence. And it's my job as governor, whoever the governor is, to faithfully execute that law. And so my recollection is that that was the approach that I had. I also took care to review each one of the prisoner cases that was set for execution to make sure there was not any due process concerns, there was not any question of guilt versus innocence, and that they had access to the courts for the appeals. And once all that was satisfied, the Supreme Court and the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals reviewed them once again and said that they satisfied the requirements of the law, and we carried it out. So very difficult time and created some controversy, but we carried out our responsibility.
I guess one of the hardest parts about it was the concentration of the executions that you had attempted to carry out. I guess in an ideal world, you never would have wanted to do it that way, but with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, how do you evaluate the performance of the entire apparatus during that time?
Look at the Department of Corrections and how they carried out the executions. They worked very hard in training on it. And actually, I consulted with them as I set the dates. And because it is difficult on the staff, they said they would rather have them all in a shorter window time of frame versus spread out over 6 or 8 months or a year and a half, because that's less stress from a human toll on the staff. And so that was a part of the consideration. You pointed out that there was a shortage of supply of the lethal drugs that were necessary, while the suppliers refused to provide those to a state because they're used in an execution. And so, that was not a driving factor at all. But whenever I have the names of the prisoners that have exhausted their appeals, that have been pending for over 15 years and sometimes 20 years on death row, it was actually the right thing to do to set those dates and carry those out.
A couple of cases still linger today. Obviously, 5 didn't take place from the original warrants that went out. And I guess the one that lingers the most for a lot of people, and certainly for advocates, is Lindell Lee. And when you think back on that case, how closely have you followed it in the time since April of 17?
Well, you rightly point out that whenever I set the dates for 8, I knew full well that the courts would review and some of them would be bumped. And in fact, 3 of them were continued and continue on to today. I actually I granted clemency for one, and he continues on in prison for a life sentence. But each one of them received individual attention and heard from the lawyers, heard from the courts on it. In reference to Lindell Lee that you mentioned, I have not heard anything new on that in recent days. So we looked at that. We looked at the trial. We looked at the evidence, and the courts reviewed that multiple times. And he was convicted, and the sentence was carried out. So I think there was a DNA test after the fact that did not exclude him. And so it was just one of those findings that was not really particularly relevant for the decision that was made.
I want to ask how closely you followed the general session that just closed and the bill that allows for nitrogen hypoxia to now be a method of execution in Arkansas. So have you followed it, and what are your thoughts on that now becoming a tool for the Department of Corrections and for Governor Sanders?
I have followed it, and I think the legislature did a good job in evaluating what methods of execution can be safely and humanely used, and does not violate the Eighth Amendment. And you've seen the experience in, I believe it's 3 other states that have used nitrogen hypoxia as a method of execution. And in those instances, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is our circuit, approved it and said that meets the constitutional standards. So it's a reasonable step to me to provide an alternative means of carrying out the death penalty. And it's going to be reviewed again, even though it's been reviewed once by the Eighth Circuit. Each prisoner in which the sentence is set will once again initiate a review. And if there's anything unique about the Arkansas law, it will be tested. But I expect the Eighth Circuit, the United States Supreme Court, to affirm that method as an alternative means of carrying out that punishment.
Want to give you a chance to switch gears a little bit real quick. We mentioned the session. Any your impressions or your thoughts on this second one that's taken place since you left office, and what stands out to you after the 94 days that the lawmakers put in down here?
Well, obviously, they did some good things and some bills that I was concerned about that will be tested in court. But that's the nature of every legislative session. And Governor Sanders had a good session. I know she's disappointed that the prison appropriation was not passed, but it just reminds you that a 3/4 majority to pass an appropriation bill is a high bar. And so I'm sure that will come back. But whenever you look at the higher education, even though it was not funded at the level it was the previous year, you did have some initiated plans that the governor supported that were passed. The LEARNS Act was funded. They passed the budget and they went home. So we all should be glad that they worked hard and they went home.
You mentioned 2 things there that are now backyard or personal issues for you. You're an employee of the state university, and you also, Franklin County is, to somebody in Little Rock, your backyard. What are your thoughts on the way the Franklin County spot selection process has gone?
Obviously, no one wants a prison in their backyard, but we need new prison space in the state. There's a lot of questions about that location, and there's a lot of questions about the cost that very likely will go up again. So there's a lot of unanswered questions that you understand the General Assembly wanting more answers to. So I will let those that are in power now make those decisions and make the best judgment. So I watch it, but I'm not governor, and I don't want to interfere in the steps that are being taken right now.
Certainly, you mentioned that you're not governor and you're getting out and around the country here. You made that campaign in the presidential primaries. So again, switching lanes, give me your impressions on, as we approach 100 days for the second Trump administration, what stands out to you from what you've seen here these last few months?
Well, President Trump is doing what he said he would do during the campaign. He's just doing it with much more force and much more quickly than people anticipated. I'm most concerned about the tariffs and how that could impact our Arkansas agriculture. I was concerned about that in the first term, and I've expressed my concern about that during the second term, even though it is even much more vast in scale, a higher level of tariffs, going to be a greater cost to consumers, and it's obviously given chaos to our economy. One of the lasting concerns that I have is the relationship that we have with our friends, where the United States isolates itself economically, does not want to have the same relationship in terms of trade with the other countries. And so this is a remake of our economy, and it's a big test as to whether it works, and I question it. So that's my biggest take. The other take, of course, is just simply my love for the rule of law and the importance of it in our system of government. And we've got checks and balances for a reason in our system that our founding fathers gave us, and they should not be run over lightly. They should not be run over at all. They should be highly respected. And so that's something that I'm watching, the interplay between the courts and the administration on some very important constitutional issues.
Now I'll take a point of personal privilege because I don't get a chance to talk to a law school professor who's a former governor. As a person, are you having fun in the new gig?
You know, I really am. The students are great, and they're sharp, they're interested, and it's an interesting time for them to study the law. And so I'm loving that part of it. It's great to be on campus and be with students, and I'm going to different college campuses around the country as well. So they energize you because they care about our country's future. They want to change the world, and those are good characteristics of young people, and it energizes someone like me that's been in the trenches for a long time.
And here's the part where I start recording for my daughter's Snapchat because she is she's finishing her junior year and looking at law schools. And so here's 30 seconds to sell U of A Law in Fayetteville.
I graduated from there, and the legal career is something that if you care about justice, if you care about the law, if you care about the future of our country, you can impact that tremendously by having a career in the law. And then in addition, you impact people. And I know whenever you get a career, you want to make money, but you also want to have an impact that's lasting, and how you're helping people whenever they face criminal charges, they face difficult times through a divorce or a child custody case. I mean, that's what the law does, is to help people through very difficult times and to protect our way of life in this country. So you can't find a better career path.